Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Data Driven Real Estate Podcast, the podcast for real estate professionals dedicated to driving business success through data. My name is Aaron Norris, and with us today, we have Erik Bee. Erik Bee is going to share with you some insights on how he went from an appraiser to real estate investor and eventually a consultant, but he's got a 2-year hilarious journey before he finally pulled the trigger that only a true data geek would appreciate. We also talk about the importance of funnels. What is it? And his role as a consultant driving leads down funnels, strategies that work, strategies that are changing because of COVID-19. And we also talk about marketing through the framework of the PESO model, paid, earned, shared, and own, the importance of each of those channels to drive authority, looking at the data that matters most. You won't want to miss this week. Let's get started. Hey, Erik, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. I worked on this list of questions that is, by the way, in our portal. It's where I sort of, in our community, what I do is I sort of build the line of questioning that I think I'm going to ask. Doesn't mean I'm always going to get to all of these, and I have a feeling you and I aren't going to get to all of them today, but I really appreciate you taking the time. I would love to start with your journey, how you got into real estate, you became a marketing expert. After high school, where did you go?
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I appreciate it, and I'm deeply honored to be here with you. I've been following you and your father for a long time, and it's cool. It was a fun way to connect. So thank you for having me here, and I really appreciate it. And man, my journey, like, gosh, it's been a lifetime for me, honestly. You always kind of get that question, well, how long you been in real estate, right? And for me, the honest answer has been my whole life. I was born and raised in a family. My dad's a real estate appraiser. He's still appraising on his twilight years out.
Wow.
Yeah, he's still doing it. And but so, like, my first job was, and I'm sure you have similar stories, but it's like my first job was painting the rental house.
Yep.
Like, and doing the mowing the lawn over there and taking care of this, and because it was a family business, right? Just and not on a grand scale of anything, but that's what our family did. My dad was an appraiser. My mom, stay at home and number one mom, and but landlord, right? So we are always doing, that was the business. And so that's how I grew up. And so right out of and it was my dad's a lifestyle guy. And so I grew up in a very active family. So I was competing in a lot of different things. My dad's a motorcycle racer, skier. And so we were doing, very, very active family. And so that's just the environment that I grew up in. And so I was had my sport, and I was competing at high levels, and through 18, 19, things start getting serious. If whatever you're doing, if you're passionate about what you're doing, it's starting to get, the talent is showing up at those ages. And so for me, it was motorcycle racing, and I was traveling all over and doing that, and with my dad, and so we were just doing this together. And so right out of high school, I got into appraising, went right into family business and got my appraisal license, and just went with the lifestyle with my, I could immediately, recognize that the door of real estate was in front of me, and that, I had the opportunity to learn it and to get to know it. And my dad is my best friend, and I really respected the way he did his gig. And so I just really connected with that. And so I did that, and it allowed my opportunity to make grown-up type money, right, at a young age. Okay.
Right.
And have the flexibility of my time. So I was traveling all over, and I was appraising, and I could come back and I could disappear, and I could come back and disappear. And I bought a house at a young age, so I was just like doing, more grown-up activities when my friends were in college and partying a lot, and, and doing a lot of different things. I was always kind of on this like professional track, although it was also mixed in my lifestyle. So that's the answer. I was really just passionate about my lifestyle, and real estate was the answer there.
It was the gateway to the means to do all the fun stuff early on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that led to, like, 6 years of appraising full time. So
Okay.
from 2000 to 2006, that's all I did was appraise full time with my dad. So 2 to 3 appraisals a day.
Oh, and then '06. So clearly this
Right? Then enter in.
enter the Great Recession. All right.
Yeah.
Walk us through it.
Yeah, and what a great learning lesson. So as an appraiser, front row seat, holy cow, right? Looking in hindsight, man, like all of the signs and everything. Like I said, it affected the family business in every way. It affected business relationships in every way. It was like, I get goosebumps when I tell the story because the ripple effect and the scars, like,
Shay.
yeah, it's crazy. So, of course, we survived, and my dad did everything else. But this was when Zillow, the automated valuations were getting more prevalent, and then more accurate. And all of a sudden, like, holy cow! I remember dinner table conversations: is appraising still going to be around? Zillow is a Seattle company. So I'm born and raised in Seattle, and so like Zillow was always on the forefront of us as appraisers. And the appraisers are older community, and I'm the youngest appraiser by 20 years in any class and anything I did. I was always 20 years minimum by young. And so I was just kind of watching all this stuff, and I was always knew, like, what, we got to hedge our bets with real estate game. And my dad was like, man, I know you and your personality, you got to get your broker's license, start looking at different angles within real estate to start playing, buying real estate. Just look at it from different angles, because who knows what's happening right now with the liar loans and the this and that, and the bubble of the way it was coming down, and the leverage to the appraisers, that were inflating the refis, and like, I remember those being on my desk, and like the ethical battle of, like, you either are going to get this value or you're not going to get the job. Do you want more jobs in the future? You're going to get these values. You get it?
Yeah.
Like, that stuff was around all over the place. And it was like, holy cow. And then the appraisal management and cut the fees and all this stuff. And so, like, yeah, so I had to get diverse in real estate. So I got my broker's license, and I had my appraiser license for 5 years. And so I got to skip right to the broker status.
Oh, okay.
Right. And because there's your exam, after you have 5 years of appraisal licensing and everything else. So I got to get my broker's license right away. And so I was doing traditional real estate appraising, and then buy, fix, and sell, like, oh, okay. Now, like, remember, I was just listening to Sean O'Toole and his enter in with foreclosure radar. I remember when foreclosure radar became a thing. And I remember being like, holy cow, that changed the game. Like, for the people that were, if you remember before, what a market was, as far as just access to data, consistent data, things that were accurate. I used to, during this time, I was so curious. I remember the aha moment when I realized that people bought real estate at below market value. Like, wait a minute. So most people, everybody's buying at market value. That sets market value. But then there's some people that buy it below market. How much? Oh, hundreds of thousands below sometimes. Like, and I remember that just being like, holy cow, there's a whole underworld of real estate. And I always looked at this lens of retail value, and I'm an appraiser, and all these things, right? And so I just remember when that game just kind of like clicked for me, and I was like, whoa, okay, I got to study this. I got to know this. And so I didn't have money. I didn't understand hard money. I didn't understand the game for really what it was at this moment. But I started going to the foreclosure auctions and just studying it. And my wife and I, we were crazy this way. We went to every foreclosure auction for like 2 years, every Friday, and just showed up, and it was turned into networking. Right, who's there, and okay, what's he buying? Okay, and then you see
snacks,
yeah, who's talking crap on who? Oh, okay, wow, that's how these two play against I started seeing the game for what it was.
2 years?
What's that? 2 years. I went every Friday. in my local market for 2 years. But every time I picked 5 houses that I would hypothetically buy. And so I would appraise them prior. So like through the week, I would pick 5 houses. Then I would go drive them because I'm out in the field doing appraising anyway. So I would just be like, okay, and then I would nail down my opinion of value of it. So then when I would go to Friday, it would be like I would have my files and it was as if I was buying. I would like mock play kind of. And then I would see what they would actually sell for. So I would get the perspective of like, okay, this is what the value is. Here's the comps. This is what it sold for. Okay.
Wow. What a great idea.
Then just start watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like, okay. So then I started trying to figure out the math. Okay. So are they making how much or what? Okay. And then and I was doing this kind of obsessively, if you will, in that moment where I just built files. I treated it like an appraisal. It was just the same process. So I had a little file and I had a file cabinet, and my dad's friend came over, in the appraisal office, and at one point, like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, this is what I do. I go on Friday and I tell him this is my stupid, what I do. And he's like, man, I can't believe you do this. Like, when are you going to finally buy one? And I'm like,
right.
well, I don't have money,
Okay.
I don't like, still learning, right? Still connecting, right? Just like, I don't know, and he's like, well, man, you can do it this way, or this way. And he started talking about well, I could lend you money, right? And then, private money. Oh, well, I have this line of equity that I have at 5%, and I'll lend it to you at 10. I'm like, oh, holy cow. So then this dot started connecting, and I started showing up to the auction with the loaded gun, right?
Wow. Okay.
With a check. And then, but I never bought one. I came really close because I learned that that's the riskiest place to buy. Really.
We've covered that a few times on the show. The trustee sales, particularly in states like, I don't know the other markets, but California, brutal. My brother was in that space for a really long time. And I mean, he had a CRM system. He was using PropertyRadar. He had built a custom CRM system where he knew the people that were bidding and for what companies. And if you showed up green, they would run you up. So you never showed up again. It was brutal. So good for you. I mean, but wow, 2 years of never pulling the trigger.
2 years, yeah. Well, so it was about 18 months of like going there with no money, and then it was like 6 months of going there with a loaded gun. I had a cashier's check, and I'd show up, and I was like nervous having them. Went going through all that stuff, but I was really strict on my numbers. Like I just like, there's the line. And I remember that emotional jousting in the eye-to-eye contacts that happened. I mean, it's game time, and so I never
metrics in your data though. That's key. So good for you. That says a lot.
Yeah, and so, but then the wholesalers. Then I figured out like, oh, you can buy from these people and this, that, and the other thing. So that was my entrance.
Okay, so other avenues to buy besides trustee sale. Okay.
That was my entrance. Like, okay, I can actually perform due diligence on a property before I buy it. Oh, wow. Okay, there's other opportunities, there's other avenues, and okay, this is the wild, wild west. Those are really gunslingers. Those are the real, okay, got it. You don't need, you can play over here. Okay. And then I just figured that out, that like there's different ways to play the game and different approaches. And so I started to develop that and get really interested in volunteering to all the REIAs. Like that's what I did. You want to know like the truth? Like I'm a kind of a grinded out guy, if you can't tell. Like I show up enthusiastically to work. I like that. That's how my dad is. That's how we play our sports. And so like I show up to REIAs and I volunteered. What do you guys need? How can I help?
So is that how you sort of fell into the fortune builders game?
Everything.
Wow.
Everything I do is like around that principle.
So the Fortune Builder brand, I mean, obviously Than Merrill is very well known, the TV show. What was your role within the company while you were there?
Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm going here, is like that's exactly where I met Than. I was at a REIA event in my local town in 2006, right when all of this was really happening, and CT Homes was they were on TV at that point. I didn't even hear, I wasn't watching TV much. And, so that wasn't anything to me. I was just there at the REIA, but Than Merrill's at the front of the room. And Than Merrill, like at that time, like it was just kind of one of those moments where, we just connected, like his presentation, me in that moment, the whole thing just like, boom, we were their beta students. We didn't know it at the time, but they were very young and they were just doing their first boot camps. And we were, yes, yeah, we'll go, being enthusiastic there, having a resume and being a doer. And it's not that I had all these tremendous results per se, except for already a decade or 6 years in the industry, right? And a very thorough understanding of what it is. So I brought insight.
I definitely think the guru education definitely gets a bad rap. I actually heard a lot of good things specifically about fortune builders because they really focused on a lot of tools and funding, and everybody learns differently. I think that's what's interesting. Some people really need a format. They want that boot camp experience, sort of like a classroom. It's like getting your MBA. Like for me, I know I educate best with a format where I'm consistent showing up. If you leave me on my own, I'm not always good. So everybody learns differently, and all the education out there, it's built differently, and it works for some and not others. And there's a very small percentage of people who pull the trigger and ever execute. So nothing necessarily to do with the educator and more to do with the person involved, but you were already well on your way to being in executing the business. Just what did the boot camp format do for you that made you pull the trigger?
Yeah, it's a great question, and something that really I think is important. Like, because what I learned is that there's a lot of enthusiasm in sales. Okay, and so a big part of sales in general is enthusiasm and getting people into that moment of belief into wherever they're going. And that's sales in anything, right? But in the guru seminar sales, they're really great at creating energy and belief and so they get a lot of people that fire in and go and pay big money for different education. Unfortunately, what you see is just that enthusiasm drops off and and a lot of people don't make their investment. They don't get out what they put in. It happens a lot. Now, fortune builders, I can tell you, with the thing that really, what I connected with them is that Than is he's a tremendous leader. He really is. And the thing about fortune builders, man, that he inspired his whole company that way. So fulfillment was that way. Okay. And so that's a big difference when you, not only when you have a front end sales with all that energy and belief and people come into, anybody can play real estate, and you just got to learn the game, and anybody can do it. It's the truth. And I've seen it go zero to hero all the time. And so you get that. What Than, though, what I believe in, I had my little sliver of part of this was just doing the business and carrying that energy through the fulfillment. So leading people into action that way, and with good ethics and integrity, and showing them, the true business for what it was in a very systematic way. That, if you were to really follow the steps and really take the action and do it, oftentimes you have to show up with enthusiasm. You can't just show up with a pulse, but you got to show up and do it. But if you do it, there's a result to be had.
Yeah, I think there's a misconception that this business is easy, and I think HGTV has ruined a lot of things. It's so shiny and packaged in an hour show, but I don't want to focus too much on that. It's important for, just the sake of, we're going to talk a little bit more about data and how complex it's gotten, but you've really worked coming up through the appraisal, getting your broker's license, being a real estate investor, and then operating sort of in the education space. You see why people win and fail. So it's important conversation as we get into really where you've gone. So in Fortune Builders, you got more into the marketing side. You really help them a lot with their marketing. And I have to say, I've probably been in marketing now well over 20 years. The last 10 years has been insane. The different channels I have to focus on, the amount of just reaching people, breaking through all the noise has gotten so much more complicated. Marketing.
Yeah, so like this is the kind of the cheater line, the inside line that I got that like really sparked the marketing juices for me was flying underneath and learning underneath Than Merrill. He's like a marketing guy. Like he's just, that's the way he thinks. Marketing and sales, marketing and sales, marketing and sales. That's his brain. And so I was under his right wing, like for many years. Like I got to follow his patterns and follow his leader and see why he was doing a lot of what he was doing. And I carried that over into real estate, right? And so I had the opportunity to manage all of the marketing and acquisitions at CT Homes here in San Diego County. And that's their real estate Than Merrill owns CT Homes, and that's their investment company. And so I was leading all of their marketing and acquisitions there. And so I had his marketing budget, his marketing influence, and all I had to do is show up enthusiastically to work, right? And just be a part of it and just go and see the experiments unfold and, okay, what are we doing, and adjust and go and try to create something, be on the front edge of what's working, what's not working. That was the seat that I got to sit in for 4 years. And I cherish that, I really, because I was, not that it was, free marketing money, but it was like, as long as we could justify the budget, we had the budget to do what we needed to do.
Now, to be clear, the strategy was going after off-market equity deals, correct?
Correct, exactly. So yeah, we're trying to find investment opportunities and working directly with sellers, pre-market, we had an MLS strategy, but this was, all to single family, below 4 unit, 2 to 4 unit, SFR 2 to 4 unit type of acquisitions. Most equity, but over the years that I was there, I mean, we were doing a high volume of transactions, 80 to 100-ish type of transactions per year. So that's, I got really good at the foreclosure niche. There was several years there where we were doing 50 to 60 foreclosures per year. We were doing that same volume in short sales there for a while. And so I got really, really great at working within a team of foreclosures and short sales. And again, that's where PropertyRadar was like our silver bullet to all of, dissecting those transactions and setting up the team for success all the way through that.
Well, certainly in a specific period of time from, say, like 2007 to 2010, the majority of everybody's opportunity, I shouldn't say the majority, but it was far easier to have conversations with banks through the foreclosure or the short sale route, because talking to equity sellers was very difficult because a lot of times they knew the prices had gone down, but when you were presenting an offer and you were in years like 07 where prices were coming down so quickly in California, I mean, here in the Inland Empire, we halved our price, our median price. It was insane. And in some neighborhoods, it was worse. So, you show up and maybe you send out a postcard and if you were talking to an equity seller, they call you a month later. You're like, yeah, that price was good for that month. It's come down.
Yeah. We're redoing that. Yeah.
Brutal. So going after the distressed market was clearly, very popular. And then Sean made the switch from foreclosure radar to property radar, which is really important because the strategy very much changed. So you fell into marketing there. So after you left Fortune Builders, what have you been doing since?
Well, yeah. So I spent so many years in the experiments of marketing. So direct mail, I ran all the direct mail campaigns, pulled all the lists, did all of the pay-per-click, all of the, the social media, the YouTube for CT Homes and everything. I had all of my hands in that stuff, copywriting, everything that goes down into it. I took that and essentially started my own company where we do it, on our turf, and then, but really wanting to take this, because what I proved over the years, and it was always kind of like, I knew I was in like the science lab, just doing all these different experiments. And here's the real, the best part of what I was doing was not only was I creating results in our market and failures, right? Learning and adjusting and winning and learning and, doing all of that on a day-to-day basis with my team, but having the opportunity to be a teacher. So I was teaching at Fortune Builder. We had a studio there a training room. And so once a month, it got to be once a month, I would host a training where 90 people from across the country would show up for 3 days, and I would teach exactly what we're doing in the marketplace right now, currently. This is the letter we're sending. This is the, the messaging that we're doing. It's the frontline insight to everything that we're doing. And so the best way to learn is to teach. I believe that. And so I really love teaching, and I really love that the way you can really sharpen your own skills by being a great dedicated teacher. And so that was my teaching outlet. And so I by having that, I would always get and inspire the conversations from other people across the country, like, oh, what's happening in your market? Oh, try this. Oh, and I would get connected to the results. And so I started to establish like a common, like what is working across the country, what is working, and what can I start taking at a scale and really doing. And so I just put together the key systems that it takes to run a marketing engine from a very small, simple level to that has scale, so you can add to it and have run 10, 15 different campaigns. All, as long as you have it all integrated, it is truly just a funnel that goes through a channel into, and ultimately an inbox, or a CRM where you're managing your leads. And so that's what I would teach. It's the funnel aspect. You have to have a wider net, and then step by step into a sales process. And so I just spent years developing that process, and now I offer that across the country to other people that are really want to pour into the science of marketing and acquisitions, because it's always different. You got to know the science of it to follow it, right?
Yeah. So realestatefunnels.com, that is your company.
Yeah.
And I love the word funnels because it's channel neutral. So let's start at the beginning. Somebody comes to you and says, is it the people that are coming to you, is it because they're not good at marketing, or they're trying to outsource just because they're good at a specific side of the business? What are they looking at before they come to you?
Most of the time it's people that are scaling,
Okay.
so you when you're growing, you can, there's only so much you can do, right? And so oftentimes the marketing it's where you're spending your money. So business owners, myself included, we all keep a really tight grip on your marketing dollars and what you're spending on your marketing and this and that for the most part. And oftentimes it's the business owner doesn't spend enough time there to be, have a total relevant understanding. They might have a vague understanding of what is today's marketing, but it starts getting complex quick as far as where do you go, how do you develop a plan, how do you track it, all these different things that go into it. So it's usually the business, my clients are the ones that are making it going from that small business space to, okay, now we're running a team, now we're going. And now we got a marketing budget consistently, and now we're really going for it. Those are my clients, and the ones that are shifting into that space, and they're that way they're outsourcing their marketing department to a team, myself and my team. This is all we do. Like we know what questions to ask. We know where to focus our attention as far as, okay, which demographic? Well, let's go data. I call it data hunting. Let's go see where your demographic is. Let's go see, you'll learn real quick if you should be focusing on foreclosures or not, depending on how many there are, right? So you just I go data hunting into the marketplace, and we develop a plan based on the data and their ultimate strategy.
Are you oftentimes helping them refine
Exactly.
You are. So you're actually almost consulting them on like, hey, I know you've been focused here, but the data is telling me this. Really?
100%.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's all, the whole thing. You have to consult through it, because it's not the same answer everywhere. So I always go into it understanding where the results have come from, where has there been a success pattern that we can pick up on. If there is, great. If there isn't, then we need to develop one. So that's fine. Where's the most logical place to start developing a baseline of success that we can then start working on and improve? And that's what it really takes.
We talk at Property Radar about chocolate versus peanut butter. Chocolate being who you bring to the business, what people are good at inherently, to where they can just, it's how they develop their niches, because it's who they bring to the party.
Yeah.
And then there's the peanut butter, which is the data. It's when the marriage of those two. So one of the
Mhm.
questions I would immediately get from, referring somebody like you would be, well, he's just going to execute the same, investor carrot website, and he's going to be running the same exact ads, and I'm going to be competing with his other clients. What do you say to that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so right now, there's, hey, first and foremost, like everybody has access to most of the same tools. I don't have anything that's like,
Super
here.
secret.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it. Like I'll show you the way, and I'll teach you, I can teach anybody, the DIY people. And there's a lot of them. I'll just do it. You just described that profile. Like, well, he's just going to, and I can do it. Yeah, you can do it too. Right. And you can go to grocery store and pick up everything just like, and you can go do, like, we can all do it. It's not a
Right.
problem. Where do you want to focus your time and your ROI personally is the question. Now, yes, I've had tremendous result with carrot websites as an example. So if there's a success pattern there, I'm not going to tell you to change it. Let's continue to maximize it, but let's look where else we can maximize your results. And most of the time, there's people run into a blank slate. They don't have that level of thought or time to energy to answer these questions. And that's where they start leaning on somebody that can say, all right, this is how I would approach it. I would focus on this data set. This is in line with what you can offer them, right? What are you offering? Are you only offering cash offers, right? Is that your only trick?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, first, let's work on that. But number two, like, let's make sure that we're spending the time with the demographic that can say yes to your cash offers, and not, something else, right? It's got to be a good match there.
How often in your experience, so you're clearly talking to somebody who's already got experience, doesn't sound like you're necessarily trying to tackle people who are brand new. So in their mind, they already have an avatar, if you will, like a target. How
Yep.
often times when you go through the process of onboarding, do they end up changing who they decide to market to? I mean,
Almost.
almost
Oh,
always.
yeah, almost always.
Well, it's interesting working with a marketing person that understands the business enough to know the insides and the other opportunities that there are. So that's interesting. It's just interesting. So
Yeah. Like, and especially now, I mean, like, because the data set is changing so much with, what is happening right now, like, so there's so many people, they're looking right now, and they're just kind of scratching their head. The foreclosures are gone. The easy answers, the way, where that have been there or whatever, it's all changing. Right. And so, but the opportunities are always there. And so what I always do, and just when we debrief with our clients, but you can, right now, it's people with equity, it's that second homes, or people are selling those things quickly. It's the land rich, cash poor is happening. And so people are having to adjust, their position, with their assets to get more cash into their hand right now. It's just happening. And it's going to continue to happen right now. And so we're not going to be in the foreclosure game for a little while.
yeah.
But we are going to be, people are going to be trading equity for cash, so.
For sure. We're watching all the winners and losers across all the different categories. There's going to be a lot of interesting things to watch for. And some of it we just don't know. Nobody can predict because we don't know the path to containment and control of the virus. And, the longer this goes on and people get a chance to sort of dig in their heels into a lifestyle adjusting to this, what if you can educate and work from anywhere in the world, and you decide to take your kids on a nonstop Airbnb hopper every month? You're just going to go to a different Airbnb across the country and
Yep.
experience something new. There's just so many different ways that people can play this pandemic, and it's going to be interesting to see real estate's role in that. Here in California, the market's very hot. COVID-19 has definitely changed that up. Are you seeing any major issues with marketing and communicating and finding people?
Yeah, I mean, there's, in California, it's been hard hit on this topic for sure. And so the thing, to me, is like, the people that are actively marketing, and if you're getting your message out there effectively right now, I've had my clients that have record months, and I've had other clients that are, you know, that are struggling to see the opportunity. So there's a lot of mindset happening right now, internally, externally. So just know, like, that's just true. But the thing is, like, we've been really good at just using low cost marketing strategies like SMS type of marketing strategies that allow us to get to such a broad spectrum of data set. Mm-hmm. So we're just turning through more data, people, yeses, nos, faster, bigger. And so we're turning up, you know, ratios that are great. You know, our lead conversion right now is strong, and so we're just figuring out how to be more efficient through this game and processing.
Let's back up a little bit. Real estate funnels. Let's define funnel. If somebody is stumbling upon this, how do you describe a funnel?
Yeah, so sales funnel. So there's a top of the funnel you'll hear in sales, and that's how people first meet you. You know, how first see you. It's the top of the funnel. So it's that first outreach. Okay, so that's the very top of the funnel. Then there's the next step down a sales process to where you actually, you know, convert into a, you know, money, if you will, right? And so there's all these different stages that happen, and so each one of those stages has conversion ratios. You meet this many people, and then out of a certain percentage of those people want to talk to you again, and then a certain percent of those people want to talk to you even further, and then a certain percentage actually, you know, become a sale. So that's just a sales principle and process. So in real estate funnel systems, we just build that process for our clients. We're just through that process, because to me, that's where all of the answers that seem so vague. Well, what's working? What's not working? Well, let's look at your funnel. Let's look at your conversions in your ratios, that's where the answers are. Are you, if you have a 50% response rate, but you have a 0.1 conversion rate, that just tells me you're talking to so many people, but nobody's interested.
Right.
Nobody's interested. So, like, okay, so let's understand these ratios. I would rather talk to a fewer amount of people that converted a much higher ratio, right? So
do you have a target ratio, a conversion ratio out of the gate that you're always in the back of your mind you want to hit?
Yeah, in per channel. So, you know, like right now we're playing so heavy in the science of text message marketing, and that's a fun arena, and that's not the only arena that we play in, but that's a fun arena to play in because there's so much instant results.
Really?
Like, okay. You know, test and measure is like you can test one phrase against another phrase as an open liner and get a ratio within an hour.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. You know, because just 80% of your responses when you send a text message happen within the first hour. Okay.
Wow.
So you just get this level of instant result back. And so then, you know, of course the results will continue to come in from a text message beyond that. But when you start understanding, like, hey, we can create these phrases, intro statements, conversation starters, and you have to be as creative as possible. Here's the challenge of all this game is that we're at war with the carriers. Okay, the carriers are trying to shut down spam and sales and all this stuff. They don't want this to be happening, and we are systematically doing it. Okay, so we have to be compliant. There's a whole set of rules and things that you have to be aware of in order to even be relevant in this arena. So,
and I'm not that guy, so I would definitely hire only people that know how to play the space carefully.
Well, like, you know, so it becomes really heartbreaking when you're all jazzed up on your text message campaign and you build an opening line phrase and you send it out to 1,000 people and it didn't get delivered to any of them. Why? And you don't even know why.
Oh,
and until you go further, and then you ask more questions, and you go, spend hours and 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 hours finding out that there are certain keywords, and there's not a published list necessarily, but there's certain keywords that if you put them in any text message, it will immediately go spam, get marked. So there's a whole science and algorithm that you've got to be aware of to then play into.
so you're saying that the carriers will shut down the delivery before it even happens?
Yeah, based on words.
Oh, okay. Quick embarrassing story. I learned this really hard lesson. I love the test. I bought this program, and I forget where I bought this email list of realtors. It was a long time ago. I bought this program knowing that if I tried to email the realtors out of the blue, cold email, that the internet service providers would shut me down because it says, I don't know who you are. You've never emailed this person before. So AOL, cut me off.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, I know the name of this game. So I bought a program that throttled one email a minute, and I just left it running for weeks until one day it was it was clear that none of the emails from anybody in the company was being delivered. It was just everything was bouncing, and we're like, what happened? I had been blacklisted by 3 different internet service providers. I thought I had understood the rules. We had to hire a technology company an entire week at high expense to beg to be unblacklisted because we couldn't send emails out at all. It was terrible. So I can't stress the importance of doing it right. and I didn't know the carriers were onto that game and were able to shut things down. So that's good to know.
Oh, totally. No, you're exactly right. And I've got so many more stories of just like that. Exactly. And how would you know, right? And until, because these little hacks show up and this and that, but it's a serious game. And so I've had clients like, oh, because you can now skip trace. Skip tracing has opened the door to a whole lot of people, to a whole lot of information that didn't previously have access to it. Like whether, like it's just now skip tracing has gotten so easy compared to 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, skip tracing was just, private detective stuff. Like now it's like, you buy a list, go skip trace it. Where do you,
Yeah.
So now people will take that list and then just cold email and do cold email campaigns and then blow up their URL and get flagged and then all of a sudden their SEO goes poof, and they're like, it's all connected.
It is. You have to be so careful.
It's all connected. So, and understanding that it's all connected, when you build out your funnel strategy, like there's certain, it's not that you can't play in the cold email game, but you have to do it in a way that if it breaks, it won't tip anything else bad.
Okay.
Right? There's certain firewalls that you can set up to still still run experiments in certain arenas. Right.
Okay.
So just to kind of keep relevant, but at the end of the day, like we really, really love the experiments that we've been playing with the text message game and in establishing and improving upon metrics on that game, because it's inspiring.
So the text sounds like a top of funnel awareness function. Is it a function strictly of the cost per impression?
Yeah, deliverability.
Okay.
And then response, timeliness of the response. It wins just about every category down the funnel, if you will, when done properly. So like our texting campaigns, they have the highest deliverability rate. And then so that your client, we can measure how many of them just even got to our clients. We know exactly 98% of our message got right to our client's pocket. Okay, perfect. That's what I want to know. Right. And then I can see, okay, how many of them, obviously responded to them or in the open rate. Okay. Wow. Oh, wow. I can see that. And then how many replied directly to us within how long, right? Okay. We can see that metric really quickly. And so all the way down to a contract
So you start with text, and what other channels are you really incorporating into your integrated marketing strategies these days?
Yeah. So, we work text and we do a custom Facebook audience. So with marketing, the omnipresence of, you got to just kind of be around your clients, essentially. And the better you can do that, the more effective your marketing is. So I like, and what we're focused on as a company is just direct to your cell phone marketing, right? That's the device that we're all addicted to, that it's now, the smartphone is now in just about everybody's hand. My grandma, like from head to toe, my son, who's, everybody's got them now. It's just like, period. Right. So that's where I want my marketing.
Too. Fast way to cut through the noise. A fast way to cut through the noise.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so with that being said, so we do some RVM messaging. We dabble in that, but
what does RVM stand for?
Ringless voicemail message.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we used to do that a lot more than we are doing it now, because it creates a lot of noise, and the rest of the metrics, the conversion ratios down the RVM route have not been as good for whatever reason. People like to get upset about that delivery method. But so we do RVM, text message, and we do Facebook custom audience. And so we match our audience to Facebook so that our message is being delivered directly to them. So just about any time they're on their cell phone, they're going to be hearing from us.
They've always got it. They don't have to go to the mail to pick it up. Now, do you still like direct mail as a channel?
Yeah, absolutely. We're just very selective in when we do our direct mail. Direct mail is always going to have its place. I'm a firm believer in historically, if you were to say, well, where have you gotten your most results from? Historically, I would have to say direct mail. Like, granted, I have the most years doing direct mail for sure, but direct mail will always have its place. I just use kind of a reverse funnel process to it. Like I use the lower cost per touch points to weed through the list. If I can start a conversation with you for 5 cents or less, let me do that before I send you $1, before I spend $1 to talk to you. Okay?
Yeah, no, for sure.
So that's kind of my approach. We use that as filtering right down to, okay, this part of the list didn't react to anything else, and here we go.
The peso model of marketing, it's a chart. I forget. I'll post if you're on YouTube listening to this, I'll post it if you're not familiar with the model, and I forget who created it. It's one of the most brilliant ways that I've seen sort of the different function of marketing, public relations, and advertising sort of communicated. It all stands for paid, earned, shared, and owned. And sort of in the middle of those circles that are all running into each other, you have influence. So do you sit down with customers and sort of find out where they're going to thrive the most? How much is people-centric versus market-centric?
Oh, it's so people-focused, really, honestly.
Okay.
I think that's my approach, and that's my vantage point to it. I really believe it's what we do. It's a people business, right? And so how we approach how we set up, every step of the communication is about connection with our clients and how we support them in making a very serious decision, and so
so you'll tweak your campaigns to back a little bit more into them personally instead of doing the same exact cookie cutter for every client.
Of course. Yeah. You really, we have a baseline. We have a really great template
right
to work from. Exactly.
Okay.
But everybody's a little bit different. And so, but I definitely, I try to steer my clients into a really well-rounded real estate approach. Like this, I think my approach to real estate has always been investor and real estate agent working together, and really balancing different options and not pigeonholing a client into one scenario or one option, if you will. So that creates better results, better testimonials, all the way down the line, more options. There's a bazillion different benefits of really setting yourself up that way on the front end. And so that's what I really help my clients see and execute at a more efficient level.
Let me run around the peso wheel and maybe get some ideas of the metrics that you think are important that people might not be thinking of and how successful they have been in the mix. So let's start at the very end with owned. How important is it for a real estate professional to have their own developed channels, like their own website, the things that they ultimately control that are not reliant on anybody else but them.
Yeah, I think it's important. That's what I would call the foundation.
Okay.
What you own is your foundation. And I think the more long-term committed you are to the business, the more important your foundation is, period. So yeah, I always encourage everybody to have a strong foot forward on your base website, what you own it, and your YouTube channel. That's the other asset that you're going to be hearing more and more and more of. Is YouTube is growing its influence, and its media center is staggering. So people like really understanding, that's something, those are assets that you can own and communication channels that you can share. So that's what I'm really helping clients understand and start to build out.
I think the own plays the most important role in the sort of the search engine optimization space as well. I always warn real estate professionals, lock up all your brands on all the social, but make sure that you're also in social, things like address. And if you're marketing to people and they sort of go searching on the internet, you have to be very careful what shows up. You better know what's showing up. And if you don't, I think people can get suspicious. I think that's really changed. Once upon a time, it was fine if you didn't have a website. I think it's not only important for you to have a website, you have to look a little bit like a professional.
Yes. You know what? I mean, so there's two sides to that, I'll say.
Okay.
Yeah, there's two sides to that. And I see this in the field quite a bit, because the right answer is, the more established you are and you come across online, it helps in every way. Everything is easier if that's the case. So that's the answer. Put a lock and key on that, and especially as the longer you play the game. Now, the caveat to that is, if I'm in a direct response scenario with a client, how often have I had them or handled that objection of like, well, let me see your website before I talk to you or get real serious about this. In the hand-to-hand combat scenario of that phone sale moment, it doesn't come up that often. Okay, now how often does it come up when you don't know about it? Those are like when they're doing things that they didn't tell you they looked at it, right? But they surely did. How do you measure that, right? And so
you're right. That's hard. Bandit signs were one of those things where somebody said, "Oh, put a number," and you want them to call and you want to talk to them. Don't put your website on a bandit sign. It's you call. So, okay. I just, as far as own stuff, you can look at, it's just ranking locally too. Wherever you're investing, you can start playing the search engine optimization game of ranking for your keywords. And because as you're building out websites, you can actually drive down paid ads because you're basically driving people to be useful. And I think especially as we get into voice search optimization, as we engage more with these voice bots, it's something that we have to learn how to play the game better. And it's just setting up your brand appropriately, backing into what you're doing, creating content that makes sense for your brand and location.
Absolutely. And it's like the snowball that just keeps building. The better you do it up front, it just pays off big as you go. So
well, with a lot of the funnels too, I always warn people, one of my goals is always to drive it to own channels, something that I can control, trying to capture their email, their phone number, or drive them to the website to where I can deliver sort of remarketing campaigns.
Yeah.
Because social makes me nervous. I mean, we've got Friendster, MySpace, Vine, we're looking at TikTok maybe becoming an issue. When you build your entire brand on a social channel that you don't control and that could go away,
oh yeah,
it is really scary.
It's really hard to predict.
Yeah. Have you had good success on social media when it comes to conversions that you can point to because of social ads?
It's hard. It's the hardest arena. No, where it's the engagement. So the ads that we've been playing with, that we've had the best results as of lately, are the ones, the messenger bot ad style. So we're actually creating an engaging, and it's funny how it's like, this is part of our science of human nature right now, is how we just want a response right away. It's like this instant thing, so if I can get a response right away, then you have my attention, right? So that's how those bot ads work, is like, hey, learn more information. They click that learn more information, then boom, a question with a yes or a no button. And if the question is engaging enough, it's easy to get me to put yes or no. Very little effort, yes or no. I'll see where this is going to go.
Okay. So
and then you have another engaging question that will have, it's choose your own adventure style question. So it just makes it easier for them to naturally engage with you, which brings them further down the psychological sales process. More commitment, more interest, more interest.
On YouTube, you said that was an exciting channel for you. Why?
Because I think that it plays a big role in SEO, in the bigger foundation of your footprint, and I think that YouTube is, there's now YouTube TV, right? So where instead of Comcast or whatever else, you're just paying YouTube. Okay, that's already here, and that's going to be growing. And so what that allows is the internet. You can take my YouTube account to when I take my European vacation or wherever else. I still have my access to my same media and everything else. And so the channel viewership is growing, and commitment to YouTube fans and like being dedicated. I now have a handful of YouTube channels that I'm like a dedicated fan of, right? And for not only for like personal but professional and all these different niches, now I'm using YouTube more in my life than I ever have. And I think that that's going to continue to spool for all of us. But you should see my son. Holy cow.
Why is he a YouTuber or?
Well, like he follow. I mean, like, and this is a big part of why I'm developing this opinion, is because, like, man, the way watching my 10-year-old and the way he's interacting with the device, the internet, and whatever else, it's YouTube. He's following YouTubers. He's subscribes to you, and he found his niche. He found his world, and it's incredible the amount of content, and then the other followings. There's millions of people following the same little niche that you and I would have no idea that is out there.
Yeah, I heard a metric that 70% of views on YouTube at this point are now coming from the algorithm as well. So as you're sort of processing that metric, why it plays such a good role in SEO, if you do it right, there's some opportunities to optimize at the channel level, the playlist level, and then the video level. So everything from your title to the description to closed captioning to the buttons the artwork that you create, it is a science. And
now you're letting the secrets out. Yes.
Well, I do eventually. I do want to get a specific YouTuber on the channel to really talk about the data and the science behind each of these channels, because it's not. And I think that's why a lot of people are going to come to somebody like you. You happen to use PropertyRadar. It's one of the technology stacks that you can use to help people discover the audience. But the social media stack is sometimes very dependent on the personality and the person. Some people are just really awkward in front of YouTube. I always say as a joke, like, maybe you have a radio face. Just, if you're awkward in front of YouTube, it's awkward. Nobody's going to watch you. So you really need to understand what you bring to the table, or find somebody in your company who can do that. But it is, when you do a Google search, and I know Google is still a very predominant search engine, the vast majority of traffic that I see to our websites that I'm involved in, that's where it's coming from. You get the paid ads up front. The geographic ads are there, some natural, and video ranks really high. Once upon a time, tweets were showing up in search on mobile, but not on desktop, but now the tweets are gone again. So it's playing the game. I was just writing.
Google owns
YouTube, the second largest search engine. You just have to know. So it's good. Okay. Paid ads have definitely changed for me. And it's in our space, in the real estate professional space, the cost has gone up a lot. A lot. And the conversion rate has gone down.
So we have gone away.
From paid ads. That's great to hear. I think that's so important. I think people end up.
When you see what you just said, it's just, yep.
I have to tell you a quick story because this is hilarious. I survived real estate with the Norris Group. It was a nonprofit function we did, and an HDTV brand I talked to. This is not HDTV itself, but it was an affiliate website. They're like, "Oh, we can get you millions of views." And, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you this ad, millions of views. Even if I get like 0.01%, that's going to drive some great traffic. Over 3 months, millions of supposed website impressions that I was being delivered. I had 3 click-throughs. I paid $3,000 and I negotiated that because it was a nonprofit event. So I paid $1,000 per click. I couldn't measure any conversions because I couldn't. And so I basically am pretty sure that it was me on clicking those, making sure it was still working. So, really rough lesson. Don't do that. When you're talking to somebody that is talking strictly about impressions and not conversions, I just always warn people, run away. If they're not having a really solid conversation about conversions, you're working with the wrong people.
Well said. Totally agree. And painful lesson that I've learned time and time again. And it always comes down to conversion. You're so right. And without that metric, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Without a conversion metric, it just doesn't freaking matter.
I also remember the very first time I hired somebody to do my paid ads, and I was so proud of myself. I set it up. I'm like, yeah, my reach is 200,000, and my click-throughs are this, and my conversions this. He came in and he more than halved, and nothing happened to my conversions except I played less for them. I'm all, okay, I'm embarrassed. We're running out of time. We're getting to the end, and we're a little bit all over the place, but I wanted to land on this E concept, and I'm going to do another show on the public relations society, side of things, but I want to cover it this way with you. Yeah. Somebody hires you in outsourcing because they're wanting to scale. On the earned media front, what can they do to support you in everything that you're doing? Is it being out in the community? Is it creating content in-house and you leveraging it? Is it closing more deals because they're taking, training on sales? Like, how can your customers help you do more business?
Yeah, wonderful question. Thank you. Content's king right now to me. So I just, anytime that I have a whole schedule of videos that I'm to be shooting. My queue is long. And so a big push for us is just to put out quality content. I mean, things that we believe in. I want to be helping as many people as possible. I truly believe in leading that way with Serve. I seek to serve, and it's just the way that's the way I've always run my business. And so I see putting out content that way. If I can help you, and if I can help you for free, I surely will. But a lot of people and my serious clients, and the more serious you are about it, the more they want to pay you, because the more they get out of you. And it's just the way. You can buy any book for what it is, but to really get it, you go, and that's how I'm going to operate. I'm not trying to be the biggest marketing agency in the world. What I'm trying to be is really focused on the quality and the niche of my clients. And I do only work with one client per market. I do not double stack markets on top of each other whenever I work with anybody. And it's because I'm dedicated to my client and their results, period. That's what I have to be.
Okay. Is there any kind of content that you just think we should be focused on?
Yeah. For me, I think the mass migration, of what's happening on the big scale, and what are the bigger trends, so that we can we individually can better position. If we understand a mass trend, a direction of what's happening, you can now put yourself in a better position in front of that mass, whatever's happening in that one direction. And here's a simple example, and there's so many more, but like the baby boomers retiring, and how many people are downsizing in any one market, and for with equity, and they're selling the house that they've owned for 20 years. That mass migration of people, understanding that for what it is, so that you can say, wow, there's a big channel, a mass migration of something happening. How can I stand in front of it to serve them? How can I make sure that I can help them with whatever they're doing in this mass way? I want my marketing message, I want my business, I want everything to be in line with service there.
Well, we have run out of time, but I'm going to make sure to post all the links on the website, and maybe I'm hoping that you can join me on the live premiere in a couple of weeks on this, and we can answer questions if that's cool with you.
Yeah, I would love to, of course.
Okay. Thank you for listening to the Data Driven Real Estate Podcast. You can find show notes and links to some of the resources mentioned in the show at datadrivenrealestate.com. Click that Join the Community, and you'll be forwarded to the PropertyRadar community, where you can ask questions about the current show and even see upcoming guests and ask questions there. We'd love to engage with you in the community, so check it out. Please don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, and share on your favorite platform where you're listening to the show. It helps us out a great deal. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.